Hi, friends, and welcome talking with famous people. Yeah, my name is host Eric, and I'm the host talking with famous people. Today's topic is sliced bread, standard of greatness. You'll notice that nothing ever actually beats sliced bread. Everything's always just the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that sliced bread is the single standard of greatness for all things in the world. Ever since sliced bread, people have been trying to attain that level of greatness again,
They really have.
and they've not succeeded. Now, it's not absolutely clear based on
You want me to sit next to Daddy?
the aphorism itself if there was something prior to sliced bread that was better than sliced bread. It's not we can't determinedly conclude that there wasn't, but it's sort of implied that sliced bread reaches the pinnacle of human endeavor. Hello, how was my day? Well, pretty uneventful, I guess.
It's not so bad.
I successfully got the Wi-Fi extender put into the house, so my dad can have Wi-Fi. In me.
Actually, that's a pretty big goal attained.
Yeah, that's a goal attained. Sean O'Neill's been live streaming since Rachel Appaloosa signed off. Well,
On whereby?
no, on his YouTube channel.
Oh.
Sup, Leaf Trimmer. Sup, KD. We're
Sup,
talking about
sup.
sliced bread. Is there really anything that's been better than sliced bread? Hi, Sean. Um, so,
Thank you, Fifi.
oh, kitty freshness pants.
Yes, Daddy is the best Daddy.
Okay, well, that's another important question. Nashville 5 Chris Ebert Realtor, I gotta say, it's not necessarily the case, though it seems to be implied, but it's not necessarily the case that there wasn't something better before sliced bread. Just because we say it's the best thing since sliced bread, it's like saying it's the best west of the Mississippi, right? Well, it could mean there's something better east of the Mississippi.
That's so true.
But in this instance, it seems to imply the opposite. It seems to imply that not only is sliced bread the thing you're comparing against, but that sliced bread dethroned something, as Nashville 5 with Chris Ebert Realtor says. So,
Oh, Morale, you came
if
back.
if there is something that was dethroned by sliced bread,
Yes.
I'm going to think it was probably something like
Yes.
top hats. Prior to sliced bread, top hats were the pinnacle of human endeavor.
Top hats, indeed. Thank you, PT. Thank you. You are the best PNP. Yes. The kitty pageant winner. It's you.
Haberdashery was
Daddy's good.
briefly on the list of great things, but I think it got surpassed
Oh, you're right. I need to take some bombers.
by tap dancing pretty quickly. I write with my right hand. I'm right dominant. I smoke with my left hand. I don't know exactly why this is. Chris, Nashville 5 with Chris Ebert. I don't like your long name, which has got at least two too many words in it. But I do like your style. And Matt, this is the conversation that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. Greatest thing since the pyramids. Wait a second. Holy crap! My bread is sliced. Yeah, definitely stroke with the right. But then, of course, I think of that as being. I was
Thank you.
investigating earlier
Thank you.
the question of why left-handed people play guitars that are upside down. Um, in other words, it would seem as though both hands do equivalent amount of work. So why is it that lefties turn their strings around so that they they play they're fretting with their right hand and they strum with their left hand. You know. Well, I read some interesting things on it. It seems after researching it a bit that basically if you start off just switching switching hands with your instrument, then it'll be the same as being right-handed.
Thank you.
If you are taught by a right-handed person, is why it really happens, because right-handed people will teach other people how to play the guitar, and if they get a lefty, they'll say, "Well, no, you got to do it like this." Well, that's another one of the explanations is that because right-handed guitars are so much more common, most lefties um, end up having to turn their guitar upside down. So that's one of the better explanations. But I read a answer from a person who was left-handed who said that on the piano he started comping with his left hand, and he plays the notey parts with his right hand, and his left hand is still consistently less deft on the piano than his right hand, even though he's left-handed. So I thought that was interesting. Well, that's a good reason for a left-handed player to learn to play right-handed is because the guitars are cheaper. You are right-handed, but your handwriting leans left. Use your left hand almost as much as your right. Hmm. Why is there a bias that left-handed people are somehow smarter? Um, well, that was the third explanation I read. Is that actually it's the rhythm delivering part that's more complicated, especially on a guitar, because you're gonna do more things on one chord with this hand while this hand's staying still, right? So that is another possible explanation, but it really depends on what kind of guitar you're playing. So if you're playing like solos or something, then it's equal, right? And it depends what you consider difficult. Is do you consider difficult moving your hand more or moving it in a more precisely complicated way? In other words, this is more fine motor. This is a little bit more gross motor. Like I use my elbow a lot when if you want to go fast. Well, there was some lefty that I was thinking about earlier that got me thinking about this. Was Paul McCartney left-handed?
Yes.
That was Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is a real genius across the board. You know, it's like his bass playing is insane, and he's got a great voice. His songwriting's brilliant. Um, so yeah, left hand. That's what got me googling the subject with Paul McCartney, whose bass playing they said at the time was the best thing since sliced bread. That's why electric players go more and more hammer-ons. The picking hand cannot keep up. I mean, the thing is, I don't think that. No, I mean, the thing is, just because you can teach yourself to use your left hand effectively doesn't mean you become left-handed. Left-handedness is an ontological state of being, not a behavioral thing. If you're allergic to bread, then it's the best thing since sliced vegan and gluten-free bread. Nobody's ever said that though, because nobody thinks that's a good thing. Historically, there were lots of biases against left-handed people. Hence, the term gauche, which means socially inappropriate, actually means left in French, because they had all those weird like eating rules, and so it would be gauche if you used your left hand for certain things.
Oh,
They,
gauche.
and now the words come to mean like socially, like you made a social faux pas. You just saying gauche. But it originated because lefties were considered, non-standard.
Wow, you were discriminated against.
Left-handed people struggle with right and left when told to take a right. Is that true?
Maybe.
I doubt that. I mean, why would that be the case? Why wouldn't right-handed people then struggle with making a left? Where you're from, a left-handed cigarette means a blunt. I've never heard that expression before. Always happy to hear a new drug expression. Do you know how the ancient Greeks wiped their butts before toilet paper? Well, they took they had two pieces to the thing. First was a pottery shard, and they'd use that to scrape all the poop. And then was a smooth stone that they'd use to rub the rest of the poop, and then they'd throw those rocks away. I learned that from Kai Close Olympic show on anime channel on Crunchyroll, also called Anime Channel. You have a question about the anal brush? Which anal brush is that? Oh, you're talking about I forgot about that invention. We were gonna have anus brushing because, and the advertising being naturally, you wouldn't go without brushing your teeth, would you? After all, your mouth is one of the dirtiest parts of your body. But you know what part's even dirtier? Your butthole. That's why I introduce Host Eric's brand anus paste. No, just for it's like, wow, for liability reasons, Sean Ryan Barron, we kind of lie on the packaging like Q-Tips does. Q-Tips tells you, if you look at a package of Q-Tips, it instructs you to only use it on this part of the ear and not stick it in the hole. So the thing is, nobody uses Q-Tips as indicated. Everybody sticks them in the hole. But, that according to the instructions on a Q-tip, it's dangerous to do that. So you shouldn't do that. Well, that's what the anal paste and anal brush say as well. I find my anime cartoons on Crunchyroll.com. It's $10 a month. You get it with ads there for free, but $10 a month, best $10 a month that I ever spent.
Indeed.
That was a good bong rip. That's the same legal nonsense on Pop Tarts. It only suggests 3 seconds of microwave to keep from being sued for the inside being too hot. The thing is, if you have food that doesn't have to be fully cooked to be safe to eat, then then that makes sense. But if you have food that has to be fully cooked or hot enough to to before you can eat it safely, then you have to kind of err on the caution in the other way, and then you really have yourself double bound because you could get sued for it being too hot. It's like hot pockets are just born to burn your mouth, right? A good movie, Mackenzie Hoffman. What cognitive function do you want me to push on with this movie?
Mhm.
Are you looking for SE kind of shit? Okay. Well, you might like Olympus Has Fallen. It was okay. Probably more of a
Yeah.
little bit more of a SE movie than any movie. But if you want a TI movie, um, watch that old movie that we saw with the jury. Rachel, what was that black and white movie with the jury?
Oh my god. With Meryl Dietrich.
Marlene Dietrich was in it,
Yeah.
and
Hold on.
12 Angry Men.
No.
No.
Dietrich movies.
It is a court movie, but I don't think it's 12 Angry Men.
Witness.
Witness for the prosecution.
Yes.
Witness for the prosecution. Olympus Has Fallen is mindless action. I agree. So, do I watch FI movies? I have. I'm developing an increased sort of taxonomy of how media impacts on people's cognitive functions. So it's like the anime I've recently watched called the Ancient Mage's Wife was a very FI anime show, whereas GATE was very much FI polar. Now, as far as movies go, a movie like Witness for the Prosecution is very much an NIFETI kind of a thing. I think it's a beta quadrant film. It's really good. If you want to see a good thriller, well, I actually enjoyed all of the James Bond movies with the new guy that they have. What's that new guy's name? What's the new guy's name? Colin
Craig.
Firth? No, Craig.
Colin
Firth?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig's a good James Bond. I think the ones with him in it are better than any of the previous James Bond movies. I also enjoyed the Kingsman movies.
Mm-hmm.
First one was a little bit better than the second one, maybe.
I agree.
As far as thrillers go, if you want to watch some thrilling fucking animation, watch Fire Force. That's a thrilling, funny, exciting, great anime. Watch Fire Force or Attack on Titan is fantastic. If you haven't seen Attack on Titan, you really need to watch it. It's sort of like the flagship of anime. No anime, give it a shot, man. I'm telling you, even if you don't like anime, there are a couple of animes that that just stand out as epic pieces of art, regardless of whatever medium they're in. Entertainment focused on pure FI is so awful to me. It's whatever the opposite of entertainment is. Well, the thing is, Legends Fall. A good example of that is um, Until Sunrise. That movie was a very, very FI movie, and it was extremely well done, extremely good, and also torture to watch. It was like I could I could barely stand it because it was so FI. That's a pure FI film, Before Sunrise. If you've never seen it, you must see a really good pure FI film, Before Sunrise. I mean, that's not really FI unless you're, you know, I guess it kind. You know what, Sean? You're kind of right. It's kind of true that sports is very FI entertainment in the sense that it's entertaining because you want something to happen and then it either does or it doesn't. I guess. But what I mean by FI stuff is when you watch Before Sunrise, you really put yourself in the shoes of the character or the characters. For me, especially the guy character. But if you're a girl, probably the girl character. But you can feel exactly what they're feeling. You can feel, you relate emotionally resonantly so much that it's painful. And it's not like, oh, boo hoo, they died kind of thing. That's different. That's more, I mean, that's kind of like FE. It's hard to imagine a truly an FI movie because FI is putting yourself in the shoes of the character. Movies where you really feel the emotions of the character a lot are movies that exploit your FI. Movies that make you feel the significance of the moment between these characters and stuff. That's more of an FE&I thing. Like when there's a scene where this guy who had been the enemy of Joe over here for a while, Joe saves him again, and finally he goes, "Oh, arigato, arigato. I am so ashamed." And it's like it fills your heart with a sense of like grandeur or something. That's FE&I shit. That's not FI. I'm not putting myself in the place of either of those people. I'm not putting myself in their shoes and feeling their feelings. I'm feeling some map glory, right? Uh, but Before Sunrise is a movie about is literally a movie about the emotions these people are having as they're moving through the movie and the impossibility of you to avoid feeling them too. It's a powerful movie, but not something I like to watch very much. I've gotten better at enjoying FI stuff. Um, Although in general, it takes a really effective piece of media to put me in FI mode rather than kind of FE&I. I think, although it's hard for me to know. It's hard for me to even talk about FI. I don't really understand it very well. But I will say that, like, how would I type Castaway? Um, I think that does a lot of work with introverted sensing stuff. Like, I'd call it kind of an SI SITE movie where you're feeling satisfaction as he overcomes these difficulties by figuring out solutions. You're feeling satisfaction because you're attached to um, you're attached to his well-being as a character, and You feel satisfaction as he triumphs over these various things, and feel concern for him as he suffers and so forth. It's the thing is, obviously, any effective story is going to engage people's feelings in some way. So when I watch a movie and I'm crying, it's causing me to have FI feelings of some sort, but it's not necessarily in response to what I would call FI attention. So, like, FI attention is really, it's very hard for me to talk about or explain. Um, the other night in the car, after a conversation with my dad inside that, you know, uh, impacted me a little bit, I guess, in some various ways, and for a couple of other reasons, and because I was sleepy or whatever, I had FI processing I needed to do. When I'm trying to process something FI, I'll be silent. Rachel will say, like, is something wrong? And I won't, I'll know that I won't be able to figure this out by talking it out. That's how I know it's an FI thing. If there's no way to figure something out with words, really, or by talking it out, I mean, usually there's some word conclusion in the end that settles the matter for me, but not always. And often it's just often it's just sort of forgotten, I guess. So it's easier for me to say like how stuff plays on different values than it is to say how it engages you attentionally per se. So like you might say that Dr. Stone is a very NIFETETI kind of thing without really much FI because like when you have a show where the good guys are successfully managing not to kill anybody, it's a denial of the reality of FI if there's some sort of warfare going on in the show, right? Like the reality of FI in the shows that take FI seriously on some ground, like Attack on Titan, is that the characters are killing on behalf of what they hold precious. And this sort of links to what I was thinking about in the bathtub. The core fear of FI is being evil. The core fear of FE is being inadequate. The core fear of TI is being wrong. The core fear of NE is being boring. The core fear of NI is being irrelevant. The core fear of SE is being impotent. And the core fear of SI is having nothing, being uncomfortable, I guess, being in prolonged discomfort. So it's like I think you could conceivably imagine a being as as defending against those things with varying degrees of success. So I have successfully defended against being boring. Whatever else anybody can accuse me of, they're never going to successfully accuse me of always saying the same thing, of not being creative, not being original. That's I'm least vulnerable to that critique. I'm second least vulnerable to the critique of being wrong. So the thing is, I can be creative in ways that aren't subject to the critique of right or wrong, such as making a song. It's subject to an I critique, like it fails or it doesn't, but it's not subject to TI critique, like being wrong. You can see I keep wanting all my songs to validate on NI grounds, which is to say, what? I want them to be relevant. How do you know if they're relevant? Well, people like them. My songs are not relevant. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is by any objective metric, they're not. Then there's the question of, um, is there some barrier to the actual relevance being recognized or something, which is a dangerous road to go down. Uh, no, I don't think that's NI's fear falling on deaf ears. I think that's part of Effie's fear probably, but I would say so. It's like if we were to do a stack, the core fear of SE is impotent, non-impactful. In other words, not sexually impotent, but impotent generally, like ineffective, I guess you could say, unable to produce impact, weak. So it's like my configuration is a strategy that first precludes anybody critiquing me for being boring, second for being wrong, third for being inadequate, and lastly for uh, taking care of my shit. The thing is, where's my actual fear lie then? Well, it lies in the 3 and the 4 because my strategy is designed to make it very difficult to make me worried that I'm boring or wrong because I am too good at those things. I spend too much time attending to those things. I spend way more time attending to those things than you, unless you're another ENTP. Um, well, what I'm saying here is it's not actually a fear per se. I'm saying that that's the best way to put it, maybe, or one of the easiest ways to put it, but that there's a prime directive that says, let's make sure the map and territory match. Where map and territory deviate causes discomfort. So by being an NE DOM, I can reliably uh, know that I'll always be creative enough for the circumstances. That my I will never fail as long as I'm going places that require that a lot, right? Or and doing things that require that a lot. My structure is designed so that I will rarely fail to meet the prime directive regarding the logical consistency of things. So in those areas, I am safe from the prime directive catching me. Where I'm unsafe from the prime directive catching me, in other words, where my assumptions turn out to be wrong, is about how people perceive me, namely whether I'm adequate or not is a remaining concern. So I want people to like me and to find me competent and warm. I have only a limited sense of my own inherent worth as understood by FI. So so that's going to be a fear that actually manifests somewhat in my life. And then lastly, the fear that's going to manifest a lot in my life is the SI fear that I'm forgetting something, that I'm not taking care of my shit well enough, etc. Now on the back side, of course, it doesn't really turn out like in the fifth slot. In order to not be boring, I have to have a very good autopilot understanding of what already is so that I can deviate from it. That's NI fifth. Um, yeah, I know. Well, my dad was always yelling at me, Nashville 5 with Chris Ebert. When I was a kid, he was always saying to me, son, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So in the sixth slot with extroverted thinking, for me, it's like uh, it's it's not so much a fear as a resentment. You can do it, but you don't like to do it, and you don't. It invalidates your basic frame of reference. It depending on your particular stack. If you're like me, where I go MMMP and then 6 is P, it really invalidates my basic stack. 6 really runs afoul of you if you have 3 M's and one P or three P's and one M, your six will really run afoul of you. So, for example, ESFPs, six slot FE causes them so many problems. It causes them problems constantly because, oddly, even though it's not an absolute value, but it's demonstrative because they're out in the world, they're continually trying to shape other people's perceptions about them in ways that real intuitives find clumsy and easily seen through. So it's like that's when you have PPP as your first three and then M as your sixth, that M is going to be a particularly stinky M. Just like my TE is particularly stinky. I don't I don't like it. I don't want to do it, and it's generally pretty shitty. Um, Now for like Mackenzie Hoffman, she has a much better relationship with her TE than I do with mine because she's an SE dom. That's physical. TE is also physical. So she accepts that inherently you need to use your logic to apply it to something to make it happen, you know, and figure out how to get from point A to point B. Uh, but regardless, then your seventh slot, it's like it's it's not a fear, it's a blind spot. It's what you sacrifice to have all the configural strengths you do the way you do. If you were tasked to write an INFP villain, what would that look like? It would look like someone who's held precious and loved and treated well by the bad guys, and therefore uh, sides with them. You know, so the INFP uh, who's the INFP bad guy is the apologist for real bad guys, even though they should know better, right? But you don't know them like I do. I know them like I do, which is plenty enough, you know. INFPs will make excuses for evil people if they love them. A guy who reads a single dumb fact and applies it to everything for the duration of one day is an ESFP, probably. Until tomorrow's dumb fact. The thing is, um, it's it's important to remember that all the slots play out differently if you're a judger or a perceiver because of the way that the physicality metaphysicality thing works. Because everybody has three of one and one of the other. So how does an ESFP use FE6? What I mean, like a hammer that's too heavy for them to lift. Like I mean, they struggle to go like this. They go, boom, it just crashes wherever. Why does it cause problems? They come in insisting that everything be about the person, not about the words, and so they inevitably default down to, um, "I'm wiser than you." Since we disagree, I'm a wise person and you're not a wise person, and they don't address the issues. What it They come up periodically because they're indicative of a number of things about physicality, metaphysicality, and the way that the map territory. So it's important if we're going to describe map territory to show what the example of being completely territory basically looks like, and the example of being completely map looks like. The most map type is either INFJ or ENTP. I'd say INFJ, a little bit more mappy than ENTP because they have an action function fourth, we have a knowledge function fourth. And I think that not having um, a physical epistemological function, not having either deliberation or basically not having an introverted physical function makes you less physical as a being. Well, the thing is, Mackenzie often says, for some reason, I thought ESFPs were socially liked. Go to high school. You will find ESFPs broadly doing well and being liked.
Mhm. That's facts.
Um, and the reason for this is because ESFPs have their place in the world and they can be very successful in those places. When you're talking about the old school community prior to the existence of the internet, ESFPs were well suited to succeed in those environments. They were well suited to be useful, liked, popular, whatever. If I were in some sort of environment in which um, I was part of a group that needed to do things, I'm sure I would get along with the ESFP fine. I suspect ESFP and ENTP can do a great job of working together on an actual project of some sort that needs to get done. Yeah, ESFPs can be very driven individuals. I can respect people who get shit done, and I can be motivated by people who get shit done to get shit done myself. I think in that sense they can be great leaders by example. Unfortunately, this environment is simply inevitably going to reduce them to their worst qualities every time because this environment is all about the map and not at all about the territory. And they're all about the territory and not at all about the map. So they're just going to come in here and shit on the whole paradigm over and over again because they can't engage on the map on its own grounds. They're incapable of it. And to concede the map's validity is to undermine their own validity as a human being, basically. And so that is not that ESFPs are bad people or anything. It's that here they're bad people. Because just like I would be bad and um as like an emergency room nurse or something, where I've got to deal with a lot of TE stuff and a lot of FI stuff and a lot of SE stuff. You know, that's not a good job for me. Not a good place for me to be. It's not a good place for me to be where like where I have to make a lot of fast decisions, right? I don't like making fast decisions. In my opinion, making fast decisions means spending too little time on the map. So I think to the extent that we worry over things, we're most likely to worry over our SI stuff, and later in life, perhaps our fourth slot stuff, and later in life, perhaps our seventh slot stuff. That's my experience. I'm kind of extrapolating it onto everybody, but for perceivers anyway, I think you're most likely to worry about your fourth slot, and later in life, worry less about your third and more about your seventh to a certain extent. The seventh is the absolute value that you forget. Um, because it's polar, it means it's actually quite important. It's an absolute value, but you just don't get it. So that's some good FE there, Nashville 5 with Chris Ebert. Do you self identify as an ENTP or an INFJ? Maxi Kempf, you have a misplaced modifier there. The only person who could read books in his free time from Adolf Hitler is somebody who spent a fair amount of time with Adolf Hitler, and Adolf Hitler's dead. Now, I think what you meant is who reads books by Adolf Hitler in his free time? Even though that would be a little bit confusing. In his free time, comma, who reads books by Adolf Hitler would probably be No, you're not. You're not working on the FI. You're working on the FE. Good job confusing the two. I do it all the time as well. It's really hard to recognize your polar. She calls all kinds of crazy shit to you.
I know. It's true. I was telling them before, I'm like, it doesn't compute. And I was saying how, like, I hand over TE stuff to other people. It's just
Right.
like, oh,
And Jesse31 says, I think any DOM and auxiliary any users seem to have a hard time making decisions because they always look for or can think of other better possibilities. Well, it's like, you know, if you think of it of an ESFP is somebody who's always driving, okay, and they're somewhere, right? And someone goes, but where are we on the map? They say, who cares? I know where we are right now. I can see which directions we can turn in. I know I can get a good sense of which ones I want to go better. So who cares what the map says? We can do this ourselves in real time. Meanwhile, the INTP, he's gotten out the map at home and he's decided to just determine which is the fastest route to get where he's going. Then he started researching how phones do that job when they do mapping things. And then he started researching the traveling salesman problem because that's related to this. And then he started thinking about how he could potentially look into further the set theory math behind the traveling salesman problem. And it's a very interesting thing. But because I'm not an INTP, I don't have any further to go into it. But INTP is many days later, he goes back and goes, okay, so I was gonna go to the market, so let me go scout. Let me go plan my route again. That's what happens with INTPs. The ESFP is never in front of the computer going, let me plan my my directionality here. They're saying, I don't need a map. I'll just start driving. I'll figure out what I want to go to as I see it. And I kind of get that theory too when it comes to actual driving. Um, Rachel had to put a stop to my notion that we'll just drive up the coast and just whatever hotel we see when we get tired, that's where we'll stay. She wanted to plan ahead a little bit. And she was wise too because we got a cool deal on a cool hotel and stuff like that. You know?
yeah, it worked out. It was a long drive that we were doing, so we ended up staying in a really cool place. It was haunted. So cool. That place was really
That
fun.
was neat. Yeah.
And good food too.
Yeah. There's some pictures of it in the current mix. Right. Any blabbering on. So I mean, the thing is, when I say boring, I mean unoriginal. Okay. This dream is the greatest thing since spliced treads. I didn't know spliced treads were even a good thing. Goodbye, Mackenzie Hoffman. Would FI blind manifest as being unwilling or uncomfortable with having a real conversation with a friend who's been diagnosed with cancer? Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah, you'd be uncomfortable with it.
You're the kitty pageant winner. Oh, just heard? That sounds funny.
What's the difference between fourth and polar?
It's been known forever.
Basically,
Kitty
fourth,
pageant winner.
you
Yes.
understand well your weaknesses in it.
Yes.
You'd
You.
you're likely to make self-deprecating jokes about your fourth slot function. With your seventh, you find it offensive when it interferes with your ability to use your tool function.
Totally. I told him the time when you had the knot in your shoulder and you asked me to like kick it with your foot. It was just like I was like totally like seriously like disabled in it. And how it made me cry because it was like I couldn't fix it. There was nothing I can do.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a tricky question, fellow FI polar people, because right now my mom's in a nursing home. This week I really need to go visit her, and the main reason I'm going to go visit her is because of FETE reasons. Basically, it's kind of expected of me. Um, when I visit her, I know, however, from previous experiences, that the rest of the day is emotionally complicated for me,
Mhm.
and it takes some processing. Um, so I tend to not want to go. Now, she's my mom. She's in a nursing home. But the thing is, if she were if she were lucid, well, she wouldn't be in a nursing home, right? But if she were lucid, it would be a different matter. Since she's not lucid,
Yeah.
since she's so fully in dementia, I don't feel like I don't perceive myself going as having much value to her. So I don't perceive myself as having any particular
Well,
reason to go.
it's not a regular visit anymore either. It's not like you can go and sit down with her and go into that little room with a cat and have some like chat with her and it'd be pleasant and then you just go your merry way. Instead, it's like you're distanced from her. She has to wear a mask over her face. It's like I don't know. The last time it was good because we were able to take her on a walk, but I don't know what they're doing anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him this week. Anyway, you know, my mom and my dad are a continual source of difficulty for me because they require me to use FI. Like I I want I'm not prone to being considerate of like remembering other people's feelings, but also like I don't really know how to engage my dad in ways that make him happy or uh I feel like I want to have some conversations with him about serious stuff, about like end of life stuff or whatever, but he's NI-polar. And that means there's only some kinds of ways that I can communicate with him.
Yeah, big scheme things are. Even though he plans for stuff that have to do with big things. It's interesting.
Yeah. Um I think his TE and SI and lastly FI replace the NI for him. Um and and that when he comes to a final decision about things and is actually settled on it, it's probably from an FI perspective. He finally comes to terms with what he wants. But
Yeah.
it's really difficult for me to deal with this because um it's not an issue he addresses very often. It's not like he talks about what he wants. He has some crazy explanations for things. Let me tell you, if he doesn't have any experiential reference point, he will extrovertedly intuit some just crazy explanations for
I
things.
swear to God, the craziest thing though is the poor neighbor. It's like he's got a hex on the poor neighbor, thinking that he's walking inside the house stealing.
Yeah, well, he yesterday or whatever. I think it was yesterday. He came out and was like, "Did you take the plastic containers and drawer four of like no."
Yeah, we
He's like,
both
"Well,
go.
someone took them. They're gone. Could be whoever's walking through our house."
Yes, and I was like, no, it's not.
Nobody's
it's
walking
not.
through our house.
And then you say, well, maybe couldn't it be you? Because the day before he made soup.
Well, I think he actually is the one who initiated the idea that it might have been him eventually. But I was like, well, you do use those things a lot.
Yeah, you did say that. You said you do use them. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I did. Because he made the stew or the soup. So he probably put them in extra containers.
You know, regarding this like friend diagnosed with cancer thing, there's this guy who's
I'm getting the sense that you want to sit here.
he
Yeah.
is
I know.
Jewel's boyfriend. Jewel being a person from the channel, ISFJ from the channel, and he's an ENTP. And his ex-wife died of some disease that one of those diseases, like I think cerebral palsy or something, like one of those things that you have and then it gets worse, and I don't know, cystic fibrosis, cerebral palsy, something like that. So she died of that, and you know, one of the hardest things for him was being FI polar. He had his reality, which was, well, you know, it wasn't a particularly good relationship, and she was kind of a bitch. but
Jeez.
but you know, that's not a story you can really tell to many people.
Yeah.
You can tell it to me.
That's right.
I get it. Like, well, just because your wife died doesn't mean you had a great relationship. You loved her to death. You know.
Yeah.
It was probably a bit of a relief.
Those are really hard things to admit to a lot of people.
Right. Well, and so he was like, yeah, it's been a challenge because everyone comes up to me and is like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I typically make a joke about it, like, why are you sorry? You know, widower works great on the dating apps.
So funny.
And I'm sure it does, right? Widower works great on dating apps.
It does.
If you have a dead wife, oh my god.
There's a whole
That's
Sex and the City episode about how one of the characters falls in love with a widower, and he's like, basically like has 2 side chicks because he gets so many people with his story.
Yeah. So that's FI polar too. You know, it's like we have very strong, sometimes real-time experiences of FI.
Morale.
But we forget about them shortly thereafter. And in fact, I think until I really learned about cognitive functions, I was not aware of how emotional I was. I just thought I was emotionless. Really, I'm quite emotional, but I just don't remember being emotional. You know, your dual dumped you.
Oh, morale. Oh, kitty queen. You want so much love. Yes, daddy is the best.
Well, I had to break up with my dual too, Tatum, my socionics dual. So some Russian ENTP guy put out a video. His wife died, and apparently INFJ woman moved in to help him cope, etc. Left used tampons strewn all over the place. He hates INFJs now. Probably not an INFJ.
Yeah.
That's
about that.
I mean, look, INFJs are messy. Their SI is about as good as mine.
They are so messy.
But they're also too
PNP.
FE tool for that.
No.
Like, Rachel can be very easily embarrassed about stuff.
I turned into like the anime, like.
Yeah. Submissive ESTJ women. Good question. Are there any?
Are there any? I think that Jeffrey's mom's a little more submissive because she might have a 2 somewhere.
Yeah, she probably does have a 2. Jeffrey's mom is a funny. That's the only ESTJ woman I can think of, really.
Yeah. Oh, my mom.
Oh yeah,
She's
your mom.
Not,
Your mom, right?
no way. Oh,
Your
no
mom's
way.
not submissive at all.
She's not.
But
she wore the pants in that relationship.
Jeffrey's mom is hilarious in how she demonstrates anti-polar all the time.
Yeah.
After I go through this big explanation about how something's impossible, she'll say, "Okay, I'll ask you again later."
Yep.
you are not listening to me.
Mm.
You do not get
I know, you're right. But blah 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 blah. Like the same thing.
You're right, but will you do it anyway?
Yeah.
Like the truth doesn't matter, but I just want you to do stuff. I've decided that you, Eric, are a good TE heuristic for me helping my children.
Yes.
And that even if you tell me, Eric, that you can't help them with that I'm not going to believe you because you're my guy. Yep. You're my guy, and my guy knows what he's doing. Okay, but not when he tells me he doesn't know what he's doing.
I think she was calling before too because she was probably like by the house or whatever and was gonna drop off money. Like that's what I had a feeling because he didn't respond. Because I said I was like, we're out. I'm not waking you up. So
just tell her I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I know.
But then she probably bugs you more, huh?
That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You do it how you want to do it. I get the
you're not
fact
home because you're not in the nest. You know,
right.
You're really not. So. I don't know.
Well, that's not my experience with INFJs at all. My experience with, this ENTP who reportedly was with an INFJ. Why? What made him think they were an INFJ? Did they claim to be one?
Yes.
I mean, decent chance you're talking about like an ESFP. That sounds like something an ESFP would do.
Ew, I know.
Or an ESTP for that matter. Like, I came home one day after Candace moved out, and Compton, this dog that Delilah talked me into getting, got run over by a car fairly short. Within a year of us getting it. Anyway, he had taken the bathroom trash can and spread used tampons all over the house.
Oh my god!
And Delilah we arrive home. Like I think we arrive home at the same time, maybe, and she just steps around them, pretends not to notice them, and goes into her room. I'm like, Delilah, do you think I'm gonna pick up these used tampons?
Oh, it's so funny.
like, well, if I just pretend not to notice them, they'll just go away.
Yeah.
Mo Man says, "Hi, buddy. How are you?" Well, champ, I'm doing fine. Sport.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I could type police them. I always like type policing ENTPs. Very few of them are ENTPs. I'm surprised there aren't more ENTPs on YouTube.
Well, the thing might be that it might be like your situation in that they live stream more than they actually put out content. So.
Or it could be that, it took me until YouTube to really find something that proved to be a passion. And then to some extent that excludes me from doing a lot of other things, right? So it may be that other, ENTPs, they're finding their passion of some sort, and mine happens to be YouTube, but if it's not, then that is a sure symptom of ESFP hood. I mean, FE values utility in a different way. It's like, an FE tool user, when they need something useful done, they think, who do I ask to help me with this? Or who do I turn to, or what resource do I turn to figure it out? They don't go figuring it out themselves. I mean, there are a lot of people who think they're ENTPs or INFJs. Around here, there are legitimately more INFJs than you're going to find most places. There are not many places where INFJs will gather. Um, there aren't that many of them. The percentage of people here who are INFJs is much higher than the percentage of the general population. But it's still, not anything like the majority. Um, I really think that there's this thing that happens between INFJs and ENTPs where it's like finally somebody is speaking the same language.
Yes, totally.
Finally, this person, I don't have to. It's like when it comes to interpersonal things, like yeah, like why meow or something, or whether like INFJs and ENTPs will both take steps if they're in a healthy relationship to prevent the other party's misreading of things or to reassure the other party of the standard reading of things. So it's like when Rachel and I talk, we don't just talk textually. There's lots of, I want to make sure you understand, I don't mean meow when I say meow. And I'm not referring to you and stuff like that or whatever. Like that kind of shit is something that ENTPs and INFJs both care about. One might think and say that kind of stuff is dumb to care about, and that's fine. But INFJs and ENTPs both care about it a lot, and we don't find that other people are nearly as attentive to all the varying shades of meaning and implications thereof. So that's why there's a sense of like finally somebody speaks the same way that I do, more or less. Like like it's I mean, I think in the particular instance of ENTP and INFJ, it's the combination of the 1-5 mirrored and the 2-3 flipped. So it's like extroverted intuition. It assumes it autopilots the NI. Introverted intuition autopilots the NE. But they're both valued because they're implicitly part of your dominant nature. It's the thing that has to be assumed so that your dominant nature can go forward. I haven't seen the Joker film. It sounded depressing. I heard it was depressing. People aren't too odd to type. After all, propensity to oddness would correlate with something. Oh gosh golly, does sound pretty badass. So we started watching a little bit of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm not captivated by it.
Me too.
No, I said I'm not. I'm not captivated by it.
Oh, you're not?
No. I think it's got some potential, but I I will get it's enough for me to give it a couple more episodes. I am not a weeb. Okay. You can call me an otaku if you want to, but I am not a weeb.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pian.
I am absolutely not. Because I don't have some sort of fetish for Japanese culture or whatever. I find it interesting. I certainly wouldn't want to be a part of it.
Oh, I'm sorry, PNP.
I don't yeah, I don't fetishize Japanese culture. I do think, however, that there are very, very interesting things like the way that World War II reoccurs in their shit. In the Olympics one, he travels there and he asks them, "Well, how does Japan wage war?" And this is in 1964 it was set in. You know? And he says, "Well, we just lost our last war 20 years ago, and I don't think we're going to be waging any more wars."
Yay!
Which is just like, um, wow. That's, I mean, talk about a shock to your national identity, right? It's like you go into World War II, this incredibly militaristic warrior culture, uh, being the bravest and most crazy warriors in history, and nobody disputes that the Japanese were that. Like,
yeah.
Oh, looks like we're going to lose this firefight. No surrender. We'll just en masse charge at the people with the guns with our bayonets and hope to take a couple of them out as we go down. And then all of a sudden, 2 nuclear bombs put an end to all warrior culture legitimacy forever. There's never going to be another warrior culture because bravery, physical strength, all those various factors are completely irrelevant when you have a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You can't bonsai your way through a nuclear bomb blast. Their inclusion and portrayal of the West in their media is also really interesting as well. So the they have a a weirdly amalgamated understanding of Westerners. Like they see Americans as not particularly distinct from, say, Germans or British people, except the setting's different. America, they sometimes represent as a little more brash and cowboyish, I guess. But I mean, they don't hate the West for bombing them. They quite to the contrary, they see it as he didn't come off as INFJ when I typed it. He did his best to come off as ENFJ, which he could sort of pull off with his demonstrative FE and his.
This is a common question, so sorry.
And his 4th slot NI, and but he's actually an ESFP. But yeah, he was unable to pull off INFJ because his TI is not good enough and his NI is not pure enough, and you know, he couldn't fake INFJ successfully. He he faked ENFJ well enough to get me to tentatively type him as that, I guess. But I think that that's their best bet. ESFPs, if they're gonna fake being something, they're best off trying to fake being ENFJs. They probably won't sustain it just because the FE is so blunt. But I mean, the Ashadeep guy, he's he's almost certainly ESFP because for one thing, he absolutely fucking hates me. You know, apparently he hated me before I ever talked to him. Even Bakugan, yeah, Prince, yeah, Prince and Ashadeep are the same guy. So yeah, almost certainly he's an ESFP because he finds me deeply offensive and has and did before he talked to me. I didn't say that up to in place 48. I'm talking about Prince slash Ashley.
You're a handsome looking fella.
Thanks, darling.
Yeah.
Chernobyl was spectacularly well done. Chernobyl's a good show. Oh, I thought you were talking about the power plant. I was like, wow, you got easy standards, Tyler Durden. If you think Chernobyl was spectacularly well done.
Yeah, really.
Okay,
so
maybe the show's good. No. The power plant itself made a few mistakes. Okay, there are a couple of mistakes they made with that one.
You know what's funny? Is that once the show came out, it became a big tourist area, and people were like, you know, like being like peace sign, like out with the toxic fume.
It's probably fine. It's probably perfectly safe right now because the thing is, the the wilderness and the animal life has all come back in full blast. So there's all kinds of like animals around there, big animals, little animals, plants of all sorts, and they all appear to be fine. So
that's good.
I don't know what to make of that, but there you have it.
BRB.
Kiru, it's very random and any user would love it. Okay, well here's the thing, up in place 48. Um it's like I once tried to show my friend Cameron, who's an ISTJ, this show called Survivor Man, which is a show with Les Stroud in it, who's an ISTJ, and he does ISTJ shit. And Cameron didn't want to watch it at all. It's because people typically don't seek that which they themselves, where they occupy that niche, right? So since I'm occupying a niche of a certain amount of randomness, I expect my media to hit on NI levels. I validate NI more when I'm receiving it. And in fact, I do my best to shape my NE accordingly to validate against NI. I guess what's most likely to happen when I see another ENTP is one of two things. I'm likely to either feel competitive against them, like they're competing for the same niche that I'm in, hatery in the sense that maybe they're doing me better than me, or seeing the strings. So, like, because I understand too clearly how they're doing what they're doing, it's not working on me. So one of those three things, uh, and that's not necessarily good. Those aren't good feelings, really. So people probably generally don't like to consume that which they are. Uh, did I pronounce it both ways, Octavio? Jujutsu Kaisen is great. One of my favorite new ones. And in my mind, it's substantially better than JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That got recommended by a few people earlier. Now, I'm not done giving it a chance, and some of them are a little slower getting going than others. But uh, Death
Oh,
Stranding,
must have been.
I might have to check that one out. Well, not if they're both right. It's a double winner. Well, yeah. I charge $100 for um, I charge $100 for an hour. It's not necessarily live, by the way. I mean, it's not necessarily published. It's up to the person who pays me if they want me to publish it or not. You speak like an ENTP is infallible, as if you are always prepared. I mean, do I? When you say I speak like that, you mean I convey that tonally, or that I'm making that express claim, or what? Eric, is that why I'm bored to death by action movies? Possibly. Yeah. Like I wouldn't want to watch somebody ideating, but most people don't. I like watching SE movies, like shoot 'em up movies and stuff. In fact,
Mhm.
one show that Rachel and I were watching an episode of last night. This pretty funny show is called Survival Game Club. If you've ever seen it, it's about high school girls playing airsoft, but the cartoon treats all the airsoft guns as though they were real guns, and so they're always like shooting each other in the head and stuff, and blood blowing out of the back of their heads, and
Mhm.
it's pretty graphic. And it just the way it gets around it is by saying putting a little thing at the top that says like these are their delusions, these are airsoft guns. This is not really what's happening.
Ah.
My understanding of Eric is that he does not claim to always say the right thing the first time, but after getting all the information, he'll always be right. I don't claim that after getting all the information, I'll always be right. I I acknowledge that I will continue to encounter instances of wrongness in my life. My only claim is that when I do, I am able to determine whether a given statement or position or matter or understanding or whatever is correct or incorrect if I choose to direct my deliberative attention to it. The reason I'm able to do this is multiple. One, I'm genuinely pretty objectively and overly overall. I'm objectively self-critical and generally overall quite objective about things. Number two, I am a debate coach, so I am practiced in doing exactly that at work, namely making determinations about whether a given position statement, argument, approach, understanding is correct or whether it's subject to successful critique. And you might say, well, everything's subject to successful critique. No, everything's subject to critique. Subject to successful critique assumes both sides are playing all the best arguments they can, right? So um, there are certain things that aren't really subject to successful critique because of the nature of conditionality and the way that we can carefully phrase things. So it is the case that so how it ends up is that my habit of caring a lot about rightness and wrongness, prioritizing rightness, and having the tools necessary to to distinguish correctly between them, plus a lack of attachment to given positions, means it's always been easy for me to jettison wrong positions. My position is not that I'm always right. I've never made that claim. Not that I'm never wrong. My position is that my highest value is to be honestly self-critical and objective about these things and to not be dishonest. Now, a lot of people come and they talk about things that are very different than honesty and dishonesty. Uh, there's a couple different vectors, right? It's like, on the one hand, do I have the necessary skills? On the other hand, am I honestly applying them? Those are both valid questions to ask and certainly valid areas to critique. Whether I am using the tools correctly or have the capacity to use them correctly is something anybody could investigate and critique independently. And whether or not I'm honest or dishonest, well, I've been accused of intellectual dishonesty before, but not by anybody I respect. And it's not like they lost my respect by saying that to me. Uh, I mean, what I should say is not in a way that I could respect in any context that I could respect. So it's like I what one prides oneself most on, uh, what one holds as critical to their own worth, are typically values that that person's going to uphold. And I see myself as having worth or value in the world because of my honesty and objectivity, and to a certain extent, fearlessness. I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about saying something that people aren't going to like because my position is if I'm correct and I've already done all the deliberation in my head and can determine that it's fully defensible, then um, people should value the fact that I am revealing this commonly held misconception as such. Uh, the fact is, people don't really appreciate that very much. And I've got a complicated relationship with my FE, with being likable versus being correct. I think correct serves me well in the long term, better in some way, because uh, being correct at least gets you some respect. Uh, and you could kind of evaluate all of interhuman relations as expressions of either warmth or competence. I typically prioritize seeming competent over seeming warm, sometimes to my detriment. So the thing is, one of the most common critiques I hear is that I think I'm always right, or that I'm a know-it-all, or that there I go, Eric's always, you know, playing the pedant or something. I mean, it's true, kind of, in the sense that uh, when one is really concerned and has spent one's whole life being concerned with, and is professionally concerned as well with matters of what's most substantiatable and what's least substantiatable, and so forth, that one gets increasingly good at it. In other words, increasingly good at being right. You know, I do have a condescending vibe sometimes, and I can be. I'm not pretentious. Okay, I'll make that claim. I'm not pretentious. I do have a condescending vibe plenty of times when people piss me off. Something I'm working on. You know, it's like I. You know, like Jeff Shaw here. I see this as a positioning game. Um, and I guess I'm playing it too, but it's like, you know, you've tried this approach before, being enigmatic and positioning yourself as the one in the know is insufficient. You got to do more work than that. Yeah, when I get attacky, I get intentionally condescending. I know people don't like me to be spoken to like that, and I don't like the fact that they're not answering my questions or whatever. And so, it's like I hate it when people don't answer my questions. If I'm asking you, if you're saying something here, and then I ask you a specific question, and then you don't answer it, it's annoying. It's like,
I have a question.
yes, my darling.
Is my enjoyment of Photoshop fails a TI thing?
I think that's an NI thing. You're like, nobody's gonna buy that.
It's so funny. Like I'm looking at some of them, and at first you don't notice it, but then when you like close up on it, it's like, wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that's being an NI dom. It's like the joke is that you have to be incredibly NI polar not to catch that or something.
Ooh.
You know. The funny thing is my dad's NI polar, the way it comes out, like because I've mentioned before, his surprise about and his assumption that the woman playing the wife character in the ad with the football player is his actual wife. I guess that's his wife. Why do you guess that's his wife? Why in the world do you guess that?
That's so funny.
What made Kim Kardashian's ISFJ ass fall out of love with Kanye but in love with you? Is it because I'm ENTP? I did not know that Kim Kardashian was in love with me.
I didn't know that either.
That's news to me.
How did you know, Winston's mom? That was Winston's mom who was asking that, right?
No, it was Upton Place 48.
Oh, Upton Place 48. Sorry, my bad.
Well, Morridge, the thing is, the reality is the opposite. Sometimes you need to not be a little condescending to get your point across, and I have trouble with that. People don't like it when you're condescending to them, and people are less likely to work with you discursively if you're embarrassing them in some way, right? Or making them look bad or expressing contempt for them. People want to be spoken to with respect. Me among everybody, And I don't always speak respectfully to people. Generally, it's I don't start these fights generally, but sometimes I do, So it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma wrapped in a bag full of poo. How much weed do I smoke a day? We smoke a lot of weed. When did we get this half ounce? Yesterday? Was it yesterday?
No, it couldn't have been. It was the day before. No, because we didn't go out. We didn't go anywhere really yesterday.
The day before yesterday.
Yeah, so 2 days ago. I feel a little better about that.
All over line hand, ESTJs are very smart, can be really intuitive about individual people and what's going on. Sometimes, like, I can't seem to my dad will pick up vibes or cute because I try not to lie. It's part of the reason. I think he's parsing out what I'm saying pretty carefully sometimes. Um, but we're about done with this half ounce, like a half ounce every 3 days. How much weed is that?
Mhm.
That's a lot of weed to smoke.
It's enough for us to grow our own.
We are growing a plant right now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't. It doesn't. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother me. It just produces an occasional reality where we're broke and we have we we struggle to um we have to buy like shitty weed or something.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes we have to buy shittier weed.
Yeah, it happens.
The thing is, I smoke the most weed when I'm live streaming. I think it's something about live streaming that it's kind of pattern of little things that I do. I take a drink from my beverage. I smoke a cigarette. I smoke a bong rip. I stand up. I sit down. Uh, no, it's growing. It's indoor outdoor. I put it out during the morning and I bring it back into inside at nighttime. And it's unfortunately it's starting to bud already, despite my efforts to prevent it from budding by putting it under lights in the nighttime. I haven't been entirely consistent with it, and so I think I left it out a night or two and it started budding. Anyway, it'll start unbudding. It'll unbud.
Oh, okay.
I've been furiously digging for this image. This has to be Polar and I, right? Let me see.
Wow. I know ESFJs who've been catfished.
What are those supposed to be gold bars?
The shading is completely incorrect for the guy sitting in the chair. I mean, it's just. A very good find.
Wow.
Morale. Thank you.
And I call my ombudsman.
Thank you.
You know, I have a song called Ombudsman, I believe. If I'm not mistaken. Let me find it. Ombudsman. How do you spell it? Yes, here it is. It's from 5 years ago. Everybody must seek approval before they can come to my party. Everybody must submit petitions before they can come to my party. But they can seek redress if they do not like my decision, because there's an ombudsman at this party. There's an ombudsman at this party to regulate rules about being tardy. It's a Halloween party, so you really ought to be in costume. And we're not getting caught by Scott Lewin. The party cop is like a bonus spin. You win with just one stop, and it's a trip to the ombudsman, and it's a lot of fun at this party.
I'm so glad you decided to sit next to me, PNP.
So that song is called Ombudsman.
Thank you.
It has 104 views and not a single thumbs up.
What? I guess people are torn about it, so
Or they just don't like it. This could also be a possibility.
yeah.
Okay. There's an ombudsman at this party to regulate rules about being tardy.
So good.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
It's a Halloween party, so you've. What are the lyrics? All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. Don't forget to watch Ombudsman.
Yeah.